8 men will vie for $100,000 this Saturday night. It is all part of Copa Combate, the 8-man tournament in Cancun, Mexico. Hey, everybody, TJ De Santis here with the sexy Mexi, John Castaneda. $100,000, man. I don't know where you are, grand total of how much money you've made in your fighting career. I hope it's in the, close to $100,000, hope to six figures at this point. But to get the opportunity to get that in one fell swoop, right. I mean, you're not set for life, but it is life-changing in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, no. And first off, I appreciate you for taking the time, having me on the show. But $100,000, absolutely, that's a lot of money to anybody. Whoever you are, that's a lot of money and definitely life-changing. Especially for 23 minutes of work max.
Right.
Like a 5-minute round and two 9-minute fights. That's 23-minute max.
Right.
That's pretty good hourly pay. Absolutely life-changing, and I'm excited to win it. I'm excited to show these guys that I'm the best one here and the top talent.
What is scary is something that you already alluded to. The first fight is one round. I had a chance to speak with Gilbert Melendez, one of the commentators earlier, and Gil was talking about how when you look at a fight, literally a fight that is tied going into the third and final round, everything is on the line, but generally you have two fighters that have already put in 10 minutes of work and the gas tank is maybe a little bit taxed, or you're used to going into that pattern of fighting, punch, clinch, etc. However a fight, ebbs and flows. But to go into one round knowing that this is it, all or nothing, I got to win this round with a full gas tank, there isn't a feeling out process. Like, we could see some straight up barn burners right away. What is that like, knowing that your first fight is like, you're one of the favorites, John. There's more pressure on you there, because if you take one round off, if it happens to be that round, your night's done. And
here's the thing with that too, is that I'm notably a slow starter. I don't remember the last time I've won a first round in a fight, TJ.
Right.
But that's just gonna, that's something that we've been working on in camp, and it's just gonna mean that I need to get a better, more intense warm up in the back. So just basically get that second wind to where I'm already, super loose, super ready to go. Defensively, offensively, everything's coming together. So it'll be a good hard round. But yeah, absolutely, there's going to be a lot of upsets tomorrow night because it's a one-round fight, first round. Absolutely.
If you think about that from a preparation standpoint, making sure that you get your second win for that first fight, if all goes well, you have subsequent fights to worry about.
Absolutely.
What do you think that warm-up routine is going to be like? Because obviously, I mean, you're fighting on a huge audience, NBC Sports Network, Telemundo, like the amount of people that are going to see you. I mean, no offense to UFC Fight Pass, but this is a much bigger audience than your last fight, which was one of the biggest fights, exposure-wise on the Contender Series.
Absolutely.
You're going to have a bit of an adrenaline dump, things like that. What's the warm-up routine going to be like after already putting in some work?
The warm-up routine is simple. We've been trying to implement this style of tournament into the camp. So, I mean, it's nothing that I haven't already seen. However, there's really no cooling down period in between.
Right.
It's hopping right in on the Airdyne bike or whatever they provide for us, staying warm, staying loose the whole time, and then same thing, picking up the intensity, getting a good warm up in again right before the second fight. So just basically, I think the biggest thing is going to be not a 100% cooling down.
Right. I mentioned that you are one of the favorites, if not the favorite. I don't know. Do they have seedings? Is there a number one next to your name?
I think they do have seedings, and I believe I am number one.
Okay, so the old adage going back to the early days of mixed martial arts is tournaments aren't necessarily the best because the best fighter doesn't always win.
Right.
Any number of things can happen. When you are headed into this fight, obviously you want to go into that first fight, pardon the phrase, balls to the wall, but you got to make sure that you play it safe from a standpoint to where you can still continue.
Absolutely.
What is that like, knowing that you need to put your foot on the gas pedal, but you need to also be able to fight potentially 2 more times?
No, absolutely. It is a little mind-boggling, if you could say it, but honestly, I feel very comfortable about this first fight. I've done my research on all of these guys. I know their styles. I've watched their most recent fights, what their tendencies are. And the guy I have first round is very tough, but he's a very beatable guy. Mm-hmm. And I'm very honest with myself. When I see fighters compete, I watch their video, I study them, I break them down. I'll tell you straight up, this is going to be a good fight. I'll tell you straight up that this guy could definitely beat me. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I don't see that happening tomorrow.
Those are strong words.
First round.
That's strong words. So, looking at this fight and looking at the preparation, I know you trained at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy. Greg Nelson, one of the best stories in MMA history.
Absolutely.
A cancer survivor, a guy who, I don't care if he's 50 plus years old, he can still hang with the best of them out there
He beats
on
my
the
butt
mat.
on the daily.
Now, looking at his past, he's not new to preparing fighters for tournaments either. I think the biggest standout win he had something to do with Dave Manet when Dave Manet went over to, I think it was Kuwait. It was Kuwait. It was one night tournament. He beat a field that had Matt Hughes and Jose Pele Landijon in the field. So preparing guys for tournaments isn't new to Greg. How much one-on-one interaction have you had with Greg in preparing for this fight? Is it something that you guys have talked about?
Absolutely. Greg is one of the main reasons why I've seen so much success in the cage. I moved to the academy when I graduated college in southern Minnesota. Since I've moved to the academy and been under Greg Nelson, I've won 9 straight fights. So it goes to show just how high of a level of coach he is and how great the academy at the Minnesota Martial Arts Academy really is. Not only him, but he's a really, really high level coach. But all the coaches there are high level. All my training partners are high level. We take mixed martial arts very serious, and this is our careers. This
Right.
isn't a part-time thing for us. For like a lot of these guys who have kids, wives, businesses to run, gym owners, coaching, whatever. I don't do any of that. I train, I go home, I take my dogs out, I eat, and then I go back to training. You know what I mean? So
Right.
This is it. I'm all in for this. And a lot of, like I was saying, a lot of the success is due to Greg Nelson. He's a super good coach. I've had a lot of one-on-one with him in all aspects of my game.
Right.
We got a good game plan going into this fight.
Well, I think, I'm from the same general area as you are in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and looking at that area of the country, for a long time, if you were training mixed martial arts, either you were doing it in a garage or you were doing it at the academy.
Exactly.
And, for all the options that are there now, to have Greg in that school still on top is a testament to the quality
Absolutely.
that they are churning out. You mentioned when you were in college, you wrestled.
Correct.
There's a lot made about the grind that wrestlers go through. Cutting weight. Some kids are doing it at 7, 8 years old. It's tremendously taxing. Do you think that your wrestling background is something that you're going to be able to call upon if this fight does, or if these fights rather, get dirty, grindy, dragged down in the mud, etc.?
Absolutely. Especially with them being shorter rounds and just shorter time in the cage in general. Even the first round could be a very, very close round, and the guy who gets the takedown is going to potentially win the fight.
Right.
I believe that I have the best wrestling out of all the 8 guys, no doubt in my mind. Jiu-jitsu's there, my striking's there. I feel like I'm the most complete and well-rounded fighter there. So absolutely that my wrestling base is going to play a big role in this tournament. And absolutely, when you were saying that it kind of creates a certain type of person, and it really does. It's the same type of mentality as you're supposed to have in mixed martial arts. It's the one-on-one combat sport, the gritty, the dirty, the grinding, cutting weight. Really makes you, really builds character. I
Sure.
guess you could say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, character, that type of character is exactly what, I think someone that wins a one-night tournament is probably
Exactly.
That's the cloth they're cut from.
But that's the thing. Every single one of these fighters is fighting with a chip on their shoulder.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
True.
I've heard all of their stories, man. They're all coming from, poor backgrounds or, looking for a better future for their family. We're obviously all looking at the grand prize and, the 3 wins under our contract. But, man, it's going to be a good night of fights just because of that.
Right.
Everyone's fighting for a different reason. It's good to see.
We were chatting a little bit before we got on the air here about how this is a passion game. A lot of people get into mixed martial arts because they want to test themselves. It's not necessarily to be the next John Jones or Conor McGregor,
Exactly.
but you're of this generation that can fight for huge paydays from the absolute start. When you look at this fight and you look at the opportunity, this is something that is unique. Even if you were in the UFC, had you won the UFC contract,
Right.
you weren't going to be fighting for $100,000
Right.
in one night. I want to talk, though, about your exodus, your original exit from Combate America, because it looked, at least it seemed in the public, that there was some bad blood, from the promotion and to you. And I think it goes back to the title fight that you had that you failed to make weight. And
Absolutely.
then there was a renegotiation process. Ultimately, everything comes together. You're back. Did you expect to be back here when you left after beating Chris Beal?
After beating Chris Beal, I was expecting to be back here.
Okay, you were already signed at that point?
No, I wasn't. I was.
Okay.
I had that fight in between with the Contender Series.
Right.
I'll tell you this though: before the Chris Beal fight, I didn't think I was coming back.
Okay.
The initial fallout with Combate America was pretty simple, like you said. I missed weight that the title fight in New York against Gustavo Lopez. So essentially, them not crowning me the champion, which they had every right not to do.
Right.
You know, I missed weight.
It nullified the champion clause, though, right? The extension?
Right. It nullified the championship clause. So my contract was technically up. That was the last fight of my contract. And they wanted me to rematch Gustavo a few months later in Mexico City. And at the time, there was just so much going on. So there was renegotiation of my contract that I wanted to be done. And then at the same time, I was switching managements. And both managements, the one that I was currently with and the new one that I was aspiring to be with, which is Jason House with Iridium Sports, they were saying that this fight is really not going to do me any good, do me any well. You know, in my career, to keep furthering my career, I need to beat more people. So I had just beat Gustavo Lopez. If I were to fight Gustavo Lopez 2 months later, and I beat him again,
right,
how would that advance me?
Let's also let people know that maybe that aren't watching in the Fight Finder or looking it up. You stopped him. It
Correct.
wasn't a controversial decision.
Right.
You got to stop it.
4th round TKO,
Right.
exactly. And so the biggest thing with that was, you know, I absolutely was ready to do all sorts of work with Combate America's rematch Gustavo possibly, but I wanted to renegotiate my contract. At
Right.
the time, I had won 5 straight with the promotion, and it just I felt like I deserved it.
Right.
And so when, you know, they weren't really having it, I got a lawyer involved to get me out of my contract. Basically, they took offense to that. You know, long story short, we just cut ties. I got
Right.
cut from the roster, coming off of a 5-fight win streak, the most wins for the promotion. So Campbell McLaren was on an interview with another a reporter, and he was on air when he actually called me and asked to have me back. And this was
Oh, wow.
seven months later.
Wow.
7 months later, I had a 7th-month layoff, and
He called you direct?
directly from my cell phone, live on their show.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said, "John, the biggest regret I've had this year so far is not continuing to work with you. Can we re-sign you?" I said, "Absolutely. I would love to be back." 7 months later, I hop in, not short notice, but you know, against a tough vet like Chris Beal,
Yeah.
in his hometown of Ventura, California, and I
Right.
got the win on that one. So after that fight, I was in contact with Combate America's 2 months, off and on, back and forth conversations about renegotiation contract. In this sense, it wasn't anything like no bad blood or anything
Right.
like that, but just, you know, trying to get the next, like, what's next for Combate America's, and we kind of just failed to communicate properly. At the same time, I was presented with another opportunity, and I jumped right on it.
Sure.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you? You know.
Of course.
It's another win. It's another payday. You know, and that's ultimately what we're here for. To test ourselves and to secure our futures financially.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I took that short notice fight with the Contender Series. I got the win. Not how I wanted. Was battling through a few injuries in that camp, but, you know, fought through the adversity, and I got the win, which is the most important thing. And literally right after that win, you get a 30-day negotiating period with the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Within the first week, I had already been reached out to from Combate America's, snagging me up basically.
Right.
They gave me a contract that I absolutely loved, good compensation, a clause in there that makes me super active every 90 days, a guaranteed
Wow.
fight. So I was very happy with the contract that Combate America's offered me, and I'm happy to be back. Absolutely.
I think that, you know, it sounded pretty bad. It sounded like you cut ties in the worst possible way.
Oh, absolutely.
And then for Campbell McLaren to pick up the phone and call you, I think that speaks highly of his character,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
most people don't like to admit when they're wrong, especially in this game. So for him to call you, I mean, heck, put you on the spot live on a
Not even
show.
call me privately,
Right,
but
yeah.
call me on
in public, right?
In public, yeah, that's huge on his part,
Right.
and I couldn't thank him enough for having me. You know, I feel like this is where I belong. This is definitely where I'm supposed to be at in this point in my career. Whether it is long term or not, you know, who knows? But right now, my focus is the next 5 fights for Combate Americas.
When you look at this tournament, it is a field of a lot of fighters that maybe casual fans won't really know. But
Right.
there's good talent here, and anytime you have this format with $100,000 on the line, I don't care if they're world beaters or guys that are fresh off the street. People are here to fight, and that's the hardest thing I think to deal with in a night where one thing that goes wrong, especially when you have one round to advance, anything can happen. Do you have an idea, like how much do you game plan for your subsequent opponents in the semifinals and finals? Do you have a roadmap of who you think you're going to be facing?
Absolutely. You know, if everything goes as I've visualized, it's going to go my first opponent, Kevin Moreira, and then I'll see Mark Gomez in the semifinals, or quarterfinals, sorry. And then in the finals, I'll see Marcelo Rojo.
Okay, so do you tape study everybody?
Nope, I tape studied 2 opponents, and I made my camp basically revolving around them and their styles. And the reason why I chose them is because I found them the biggest threats.
Got it.
Only one of them is on my side of the bracket, and I'll see him in the second round.
I'm excited to see it play out. You never know what's going to happen in the tournament. 7 guys are going to lose. You know, one guy is going to reign supreme. In combat sports, more in boxing than in MMA, but in combat sports, a loss sometimes is devastating. When you got the opportunity, when they said, "Hey, John, we want to put you in this tournament," you're either going to be perfect, or you're going to win 1, lose 1, or win 2, lose 1, and come that close to $100,000. Right. Is it something that you immediately go, that's what I want, or do you approach it? I mean, what was your reaction?
No, absolutely. I was in 100% from the get-go. The second it was presented to me, I was 100% in. Not just because of the grand prize. Obviously, the grand prize is great, but I honestly would fight for $1,000. I love what I do.
You're not supposed to tell people.
I would fight for $1,000. I repeat, but I'm not going to. Right. Like I said, I graduated school in 2015 with a double major in criminal law and Spanish, and I was looking to get in the legal field, something that I'm very, very passionate about as well. But I gave up the corporate world, the business world, the working life to pursue MMA. So I love what I do. I wake up every morning and I'm super passionate about going to practice and coming back later that night, bettering my craft, getting better every single day. I absolutely love it. I'm super competitive. I'm tenacious, and I love everything about it. So I'm very pumped about where I'm at right now. So when I had the opportunity to beat 3 people up in one night, absolutely, I'm all for it, man.
You chose black eyes over black ties.
Absolutely.
And, you get the opportunity to fight for $100,000 instead of $1,000, which I'm sure Jason House and Jeremy Luchow are very happy.
Yeah. I'm sure they are.
John, I appreciate your time. Best of luck coming up here on Saturday night. Can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you, TJ. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, man. I
Good
appreciate
stuff,
it.
man. Thank you.